So I'd like to introduce the panel sitting to my right. First, not in the order that they're sitting. Actually, to my immediate right, Dr. Kate Storey is an associate professor in the School of Public Health at the University of Alberta and is a distinguished researcher at Stollery's Hospital Foundation. Dr. Storey's research program, CIRCLE with an S, settings-based intervention research through changes in lifestyles and environments, focuses on school and community-based strategies to promote healthy weights, prevent chronic diseases, and reduce health inequities. Kate is a mum to 2 young children who share her sense of adventure and love for being active, cooking, and traveling. To her right is Deinera Exner-Cortens. She is an assistant professor at the Faculty of Social Work at the University of Calgary and is jointly appointed to the Department of Psychiatry at the Cummings School of Medicine at the U of C. Her research focuses on evaluating healthy relationships and mental health promotion activities in school and community settings, and developing and evaluating implementation support tools for school-based mental health service delivery and prevention of adolescent dating violence. And then we have Tanya Pace-Crosschild. She is a member of the Kainai Nation of the Blackfoot Confederacy. Tanya is a mother and grandmother and holds degrees in neuroscience and public administration. She is the director of the Opokaa'sin Early Intervention Society, a nonprofit Indigenous organization in southern Alberta aimed at strength-based approaches to child and parent development through an Indigenous lens. And lastly, Dr. Peter Choate is an associate professor, social work at Mount Royal University. His research, teaching, and policy work focuses upon the child intervention system in Canada and its impact on Indigenous peoples. His other areas of focus include FASD and stigma. And so we have asked each person to speak for about 3 minutes, after which we will have time for some questions. I know that Tanya has to head out to a plane fairly quickly, so she may have to take off before we finish with the questions. But we'll just start with Tanya. And actually, before that, I'm just going to quickly, we've asked each of them to speak to our theory of change. And Robin alluded to this, but this is guiding all of the work that we do now. At the heart of this graphic is our focus on supporting evidence-informed policy and practice change to promote child, community, family well-being. Around that, we do it through supporting collaborative action, generating comprehensive understanding of child family well-being across the province, and advancing knowledge through the research and projects. The focus of this panel is on sharing what has been learned through projects that have been funded or supported through PolicyWise. So now I'll turn it over to you, Tanya.
Thank you. Nelson Mandela once said, "There can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children." Indigenous people make up 6.2% of Alberta's population, yet our children, Indigenous children, make up 70% of all children in foster care. Reducing the number of Indigenous children in care is a key recommendation. In fact, it's the first recommendation of the 2015 Truth and Reconciliation Commission report. And it's a shared goal with my organization called Opokaa'sin Early Intervention Society. Opokaa'sin is honored to have partnered with PolicyWise and the University of Lethbridge Institute of Child and Youth Studies for the Raising Spirit project. What we've learned in terms of the theory of change in regards to our project was it provided a way to collect and organize traditional stories told by elders. Preserving these stories and making them available for our programs was an example of mobilization, connecting evidence, people, and practice. The project allowed us to do the work which we would have had a hard time doing as a busy agency in children's services. These services were connected to land-based knowledge and relationships built with young people connected with Opokaa'sin. It connected youth, younger children, and elders in the sharing of the knowledge and connected university researchers with Indigenous knowledge keepers. It connected a local agency, Opokaa'sin, devoted to children and Indigenous children and families, to the university and to a local arts agency called CASA in Lethbridge. Indigenous middle school, high school, and university students built networks of connection and a knowledge of the university campus. We advanced knowledge through blog posts, co-written articles, and presentations, but perhaps most importantly, through public exhibits at the CASA. Under CREATE, we used a few innovative approaches to sharing and making knowledge on values and raising resilient children. The digital library itself was a good example. It's a mobile app that supports learning about language and traditional knowledge, and we used photography as a means to show parents to articulate what's important to them, and then interviews to talk about values. These were then used to help identify key Blackfoot values to be used within the library. We used art activities to allow young children to respond to pictures in addition to the interviews. We were centering the child's voice in this work, which was an important goal. Middle school and high school students learned about research and protocols with Indigenous knowledge keepers, and they were trained in how to maintain the library in order to build capacity and skills from digital to protocols for speaking with elders and working within the Indigenous community. Older teens learned a lot about curation and arts exhibits in working with CASA, and those are just a few examples of comprehensive knowledge. I can go on and on. I hear a little buzzer, but I just want to thank you. Just wanted to say that Opokaa'sin believes in creating a better future for Indigenous families, one that utilizes the best of both worlds, a future where dignity, peace, and respect are the foundations on which we build our families build our families up from years of colonized oppression and abuse. And we like to thank PolicyWise for their generous contribution.
Thank you, Tanya. Deinera, would you go next? Thanks.
Okay. So I'm really fortunate to have received an early career award in supporting child and youth mental health outcomes in Alberta school settings through PolicyWise. And this award is designed to create new evidence about what works and for whom and in what context in school mental health. So I'm in the middle of that award, so I'll talk a little bit about what we found, but also some of the other work that PolicyWise has supported that's been instrumental in building this program of research. And as part of this award, I've also developed an engagement network of 14 practitioners and policymakers, both provincially, nationally, and internationally, so I can connect the evidence that I generate with the people who will use it. So the research in my early career award focuses on two key areas. The first is gender transformative school mental health promotion. So there's a lot of literature showing that gender role expectations for men and boys, like being tough and boys don't cry, have really significant implications for mental health. And through the support of PolicyWise, we've actually completed the first ever systematic review looking at how adolescent masculinities connect to mental health. But the way that gender intersects with mental health has not received a lot of attention in prevention, particularly in school-based settings. And so as part of my early career award, I'm collaborating with the Centre for Sexuality in Calgary to do a rigorous outcome evaluation of their Wise Guys program, which is a 20-session program that focuses on helping adolescent boys to have better sexual health, mental health, and healthy relationships. And PolicyWise really kickstarted this collaboration with a seed grant that allowed us to build our partnership to generate evidence showing that Wise Guys leads to improved mental health and improved bystander behavior for violence prevention. And we were able to move that data into a $1.25 million grant from the Public Health Agency of Canada to evaluate Wise Guys more broadly, which we wouldn't have been able to do without PolicyWise funding. We also use PolicyWise funding to develop the first ever photo-based evaluation tool for adolescents. So looking at how adolescent boys in the program define what it meant to be a guy in their world before and after participating. And we'll now be replicating that project with youth involved in justice. The second area that I work on as part of my Early Career Award is implementation. So we have a lot of ideas about what might work to promote mental health in schools, but we're not really good at getting that into practice. And so the Early Career Award has really given me the protected time to do that research. We were really fortunate to get funding from SSHRC to develop an implementation support system for elementary schools. So we're working with 6 elementary schools and hundreds of students to help them have better mental health within the school setting. We've designed an innovative in-house coaching model to help teachers be prepared to do the work they need to do in the classroom to support student mental health. So all of that research, really, PolicyWise as a new assistant professor was my first grant ever, and it totally kickstarted this program of work. So I'm really, really grateful for the work that they're supporting and the way that they're letting us move evidence from practice and policy and evidence from practice and policy back to research. So thank you.
And Peter.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and thank you very much to PolicyWise for funding our project, which looked at the implementation of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission recommendations for social work. The profession of social work bears a heavy burden for its involvement in the colonization of Indigenous people, including through the residential schools, the 60 Scoop and the Millennial Scoop, as well as the overrepresentation in child welfare systems across this country. Our goal was to get a sense of the degree to which the profession was beginning to enhance its understanding and its connection to the Truth and Reconciliation recommendations. The results are not as exciting as one would hope, in the sense that we found a very uneven connection to the recommendations. We found people who were enthusiastic, but it was a small percentage of our social work sample. We also found students and faculty members who felt that they were in positions of uncertainty. They wanted, but they didn't know how. And then we found some who felt that as white people, it was beyond their scope to tell that story. We discovered this as well with students. These were challenges. And so what we've really started to do is to intersect this uncertainty and to intersect this unevenness with the need to bring more Indigenous knowledge keepers, but also to challenge social work's theories, practice parameters, methodologies, and pedagogy. This project has led to the implementation of changes in classrooms and in courses. It's also led to other work that's associated with challenging the application of these methodologies and theories in the child welfare system. 5 students and I wrote a report that has been published in the Canadian Journal of Law and Society, in which we outline how the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and its recommendations have not yet permeated its way into the kinds of theories that lead to the removal of children from care and are placed permanently outside of their culture. This has been one of the mobilization pieces. The second mobilization piece is that we are now engaging students in projects associated with other methods of interrogating the way in which child welfare methods and theories are utilized, and this is the next stage of the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to talk to you today a little bit about the Indigenous Youth Mentorship Program in 3 minutes or less, right? We have been very fortunate to receive funding from PolicyWise to support a PhD student who's been working on this project to really advance our understanding of the implementation and how we can inform that evidence to action component of the Indigenous Youth Mentorship Program, or IYMP. So IYMP is a peer-led, school-based program in which high school students deliver an after-school healthy living program to their younger elementary-aged peers. It has 3 core components of healthy eating, physical activity, and relationship building, but really it's grounded in a model of resilience, which is a little bit different in terms of if we think about health behaviors. And the rationale for that is we know that kids have been told for a long time, eat healthy, be active, sleep, be mindful, but we really recognize that physical health is really connected to all other components of health, including mental, social, spiritual, and emotional. And so we promote that model of resilience through the Indigenous teachings of Dr. Martin Brokenleg and Verna Kirkness. So we really focus on the circle of courage. And what we've learned in terms of evidence is that this different way of thinking really does promote holistic wellness, and has encouraged students and built resilience of students and really enhanced their quality of life, not only of the younger elementary students, but also of the high school students as well. So it creates that sense of belonging for the high school students, as well as the elementary students, improving their physical health, but also improving the whole community health. So when we look at these different components in terms of generating new evidence, we think we're generating new evidence in a new way of promoting wellness in school settings in terms of a non-traditional form of working through resilience. Mobilization is a key factor in everything that we do. So in terms of our work, integrated knowledge translation and working with the entire IYMP family, the communities across Canada, so there's 18 communities right now, as well as the students, the families, and their communities, and working through a model of community to community rippling as we spread and ripple across Canada. And then in terms of LEAD, again, that different vision of how we can enhance the overall holistic well-being of children and youth in families and communities. So that's a little bit about IYMP, and we've been really fortunate again. This project has been a journey over the last number of years. And again, we've really learned some of those key implementation strategies that are necessary to not only implement this program, but to ripple it across Canada. And that wouldn't have been possible without PolicyWise support. So thank you.
Thank you. I think they deserve actually a little more applause for sticking to the 3-minute limit when they've got these programs of work that are so amazing. So I know they could have talked longer, and I know hopefully some of what they've said has generated some questions for you. There is a microphone, or there was a microphone, there is a microphone that Mark has. If you have any questions related to their specific research projects, we'd love to generate some conversation. As you can see, there's an amazing breadth of work across that looks at the systems level as well as doing work that's right at the individual child level. And so a very good range of projects to give a sense of the power of the evidence that's been generated through these PolicyWise supported projects. And we want to thank the funders who have provided the funding to us to pass that along to you. So any questions or comments? Do you have any of you? I know when I'm listening to you, and actually when we were preparing for this panel, in seeking you out, I didn't realize how interconnected some of these projects really are, and how wonderful it is to see some opportunities between projects that might emerge. And I'm just wondering about next steps for any of your projects that may touch on some of the work that we've talked about.
Hello. So the reason I think the reason behind our project was mainly really looking at the articulation of our traditional child-rearing values. For if you look at Indigenous families, our history has been disrupted so much that what we found was we wanted to be able to talk while we still had our language intact and while we still had fluent speakers, to really articulate through the different generations of what we saw as important in child-rearing practices. And what we found was kind of we were able to create this really neat bumping space between Indigenous and non-Indigenous scholars and students and learners and teachers. And one example, because we do use the circle of courage as well as for our resilience model, and we were putting these values, we were talking about them, and there was a picture of a young boy that was teaching his sibling something. And the non-Indigenous students at the university said, oh, that's mastery. Teaching is a mastery value. And on the other side of the table, the Indigenous students said, oh no, that's generosity. We see teaching as a generosity value. And so there was a dialogue that happened that really created this wonderful bumping space of innovation and dialogue that I think really speaks to what is happening with the recommendations in the TRC report.
Thank you. Peter?
So one of the things that we got into a bit of a sidetrack in a couple of projects, of this being one of them, and that is, what's the validity of the theory? And an elder from Siksika said to us, well, you know, remember Maslow? And everyone said, of course I remember Maslow. He said, did you know that he did the work with us? That Maslow's theory came from us? And I'd had another elder tell me that, so I sort of half nodded. And then he said, you know, he got it wrong, eh? And so that's our next project, is because what we're really doing is we're looking and saying, if we want to change what I've talked about, then we have to dissect and start to take apart theories that we have taken to be sacrosanct. Gabrielle Lindstrom, Dr. Gabrielle Lindstrom, who's a graduate of the University of Calgary's doctoral program, is with us at Mount Royal. And we've been taking apart the assessment of parents. And it's all about being able to say that if we want to honor the TRC, as I think each of us are trying to do, it does mean that the assumptions of validity that have underlay much of what we've done needs to be challenged. And it's an uncomfortable space. And I think that's one of the things that's been really exciting to listen to these three colleagues, is the uncomfortable space that PolicyWise has allowed us to enter.
I think I'm speechless after that. That's a wonderful way to summarize the connection amongst the presenters. And I know that they will stay and provide us with time to talk with them one-on-one, if you're, except for Tanya, who will be going to a plane. But they're here and available to talk more about their projects. I just want to thank all of you for joining us and